And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we will be discussing and talking about the coronavirus and the implications that the virus may have, not just on the U.S. economy and the supply chain locally, but also talking about the implications that it can have on the global economy as far as taking the U.S. and other countries into recession. We're also going to talk about the impact that this virus can have on safe haven assets such as gold and silver, precious metals. Also talk about the implications it can have on the price of different cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. And also something that a lot of people aren't discussing is what could this mean if this actually spirals out of control and we see a 10, 15, 20% correction in the stock market. What does this do to Donald Trump's chances of being reelected? Because we know that he's banking his entire reelection campaign on the stock market being up and being at all-time highs. So if we see this correction, could Bernie Sanders potentially give him a good run for his money and become the president? So this is something that we need to definitely discuss and talk about. As you come into the chat, please type 1 to make sure that you can hear me clearly. You're not going to see me today because I'm mainly going to be focusing on sharing my screen and sharing my iPad screen. If you would like to support the content, please like this video. Share this video. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you want to be notified all the time, because for some reason, YouTube only sends out anywhere from 30 to 35% of the notifications to my subscribers. A link to my mailing list is in the description. Please click the link, enter in your name, your email address, and you will always be contacted or notified via email when I am live or when I upload a video. If you want to support the content financially, a link to my PayPal will be in the description below. So with that being said, we have people coming in. You can shout out where you're watching the stream from or listening to the stream. Right now what we're doing, we're looking at the cryptocurrency markets, and we can see that Bitcoin is down 3%, Ethereum is down 3%, XRP is down 4.6%. Bitcoin Cash is down 7%. So as you can see, overall, the crypto market is down. But gold seen a major pop today. Gold was up over $40 an ounce, because this is what happens when people are looking at the markets. So you have to understand, markets move. It's like a pendulum. Markets go from overvalued to undervalued, and it's very quick for markets to shift pace. For the past 3 weeks, the market basically shook off the whole idea of this going from, a local thing happening in China to now it's currently an epidemic. And I don't want to promote fear, right? But it could become upgraded to a pandemic if you can see sustained spread on multiple continents over time. But right now it's just an epidemic. But you can see the shift in tone. The market was down over 1,000 points today, the Dow Jones. You can see immediately, especially with the algorithmic trading, the markets can change very quickly. And you can see things like gold and crypto spike immediately, because what happens is once everyone starts to sell, liquidity begins to dry up. It's like when you hear me say things like liquidity in the market, right? Look at it as your front door. If you have 1,000 people in your house and someone yells fire, and everyone wants to get out that house at one time, and there's only one exit, well, people are going to be trapped. They're going to be trampled. And that's what happens in markets when everyone wants to sell, but there's not enough liquidity to get out. You see, it becomes that squeeze effect where everyone's stuck in that trade or stuck in the market. And then it's vice versa when you look at assets like crypto or assets like gold and silver, where now everyone wants to hop out of equities, hop out of the credit markets, and they want to hop into precious metals and crypto. But what do you think that's going to do to the price? It's going to spike the price. So let's look at the overall market. As you can see here, the Dow Jones is down 1,000 points today, 3.5%. The DAX was down 4%. The FTSE was down 3%. The Nikkei was down 3%. We can go over here and look at oil. As you can see on the week, oil is starting to sell off. It has a little bit of support here. Why would oil be selling off? Well, you have to think about it. If economic activity is beginning to contract in China, China is the second largest economy in the world. They make up close to 16% of the global GDP. So if you are seeing 24 provinces basically under some form of quarantine, and as of today, there's over 75,000 corona cases and over 2,600 deaths, well, people become fearful. And if people become fearful, they stop spending, they stop participating in the economy. Therefore, you're going to see commodities like oil begin to sell off, which is going to have broader implications on the global economy. We're looking at silver futures. We can see silver right now is trading at $18.58. We're looking at gold. You can see, look at gold for the week. Gold finally broke out. Gold is sitting at right now $1,657. Now, you have to understand what China is. China is a dictatorship. It's a communist country. So you can't take any of the data that they're giving you at face value. So if they're saying that there's 75,000 cases, I would just basically say double that. Because the firewall and how China is set up, they don't let any information out. And I'm going to highlight that for you right now. This was the whistleblower doctor. This guy, he found out about the coronavirus before it even really started to spread. And just so magically, he ended up catching the virus himself and dying. So let me play this clip for you. Hold on real quick.
Told the world about the coronavirus in Wuhan.
So they're saying that there's
David Culver's in Beijing. Chinese whistleblower doctor who told the world about the coronavirus in Wuhan has died. David Culver's in Beijing with more. David, this news obviously just coming to hand. A very young doctor there in Wuhan. You spoke to him early this week. Just explain what you now know.
Linda, this is devastating. And my colleagues and I here in Beijing, we connected with him. In fact, you saw in that story that just ran, my producer Young, who's in the room here with me, he was the one who first made contact with him. And he wasn't talking to any foreign media at the time. Dr. Li Wenliang had become really well known here after in late December. He was really inadvertently put out a message to some of his friends, his classmates from his medical school, telling them that something was going around that was similar to SARS. He said, be careful with your families, be careful with your loved ones. And that was it. He didn't expect that to go anywhere. Somebody screenshotted that. It went viral. His name was attached. And he got called into the health commission locally there in Wuhan. And they asked him how he got that information. Shortly thereafter, they started releasing more information publicly about the outbreak.
So think about this. Now, you have to understand that this doctor here, he was basically just trying to warn his friends and family about, hey, this virus, the coronavirus, is similar to the SARS outbreak that happened in 2003. Warn your friends, warn your family members. He wasn't trying to alert the public. Well, because China is a communist country, it's a dictatorship, they decided to bring him in and have a little talk. And then he magically, after having that talk, he ended up getting sick. And not only did he get sick, but then his parents ended up getting sick. And I'm going to finish playing the rest of the clip for you now.
Outbreak, and then they closed that now infamous seafood market. But that wasn't it. There was no praise for him, and in fact, there was the opposite. He got a call from police. Wuhan police called him in. They reprimanded him. They made him sign an affidavit of sorts that suggested that he was willingly spreading rumors, and he kept quiet for a while. For a few weeks, in fact, went back to work. And it was while seeing patients as an ophthalmologist that they believe he may have contracted the coronavirus, and he transmitted it to his parents as well. Well, what we've known since is that he is one of several doctors, in fact, they believe at least 8 altogether, who were blowing whistles here early on and trying to sound the alarms and trying to make sure that local authorities in particular knew what was going on.
So this is the guy who was trying to warn the public. China, the Chinese officials, they knew about the potential of this turning into an epidemic back in December. And they chose to wait all the way into February to really start the quarantine process the way that they did. So I want to get that out there because this page right here, this is a YouTube channel. This is Roy Lab Stats. And this basically gives you an up-to-date, accurate depiction of the data as far as the infection cases, the deaths, and where the infection is currently spreading at. It's really, really important that you follow this, because you can see there are over 77,000 cases in China, and that's based upon the data that they are giving you. And you cannot trust the data that China is providing to you. And what happened today, while the market started to sell off and why people started to get alarmed, is because, as I said before, right now it's an epidemic, but based upon the spread and how rapid and broad the spread is, because it's going to places like South Korea, it's in Italy, it's in Japan, we're seeing cases here in the US. Eventually, if it continues to spread this way, they're going to upgrade this to a pandemic. Now, look here at Iran. This right here should be enough to spark your interest, right? Right here, Iran says they have 12 deaths and 61 cases. Think about this. Now, here in China, they're saying they have 77,000 cases and 2,663 deaths. So you mean to tell me Iran only has 12 deaths and 61 cases, but China has 77,000 cases and 2,600 deaths? The numbers don't even make sense. What does that tell you? You have governments that are basically trying to suppress data because they don't want the public to get wind of this, because what you're going to start to see is panic. Markets move off of greed and fear. Well, if people become fearful and they start to see that maybe, just maybe, this may grow to a pandemic, you're going to start to see people begin to start panicking. So this is very important. And I'm going to put this link in the chat because it's important that you equip yourself with information. Again, I'm not here to spread fear. I'm not telling you that you should run out today and, stock up on everything. What I'm saying to you is just be aware, be alert, and make sound decisions. This is why you invest in cryptocurrencies. This is why you invest in gold and silver for times like this, right? This is when you want to be in these type of assets that are going to perform this way. Because as I'm going to get into the stream later on, you're already seeing the Fed and the Central Bank of China saying that they're going to ease monetary policy. Whenever you hear easing, that means printing money out of thin air. Whenever you hear injecting liquidity, that means they're going to print money out of thin air. Whenever you hear fiscal stimulus, when your government's running a deficit, that means they're going to borrow money into existence that didn't exist before. And don't worry, guys, I get it. Some of you are not technical. You don't understand that. But just follow along with me. I'm going to get to those different parts of the market. But you have to understand that the way that the market is structured, because of globalization, we live in a global economy now. Right? Everything is dynamic, where everything is connected and is interlinked. So if you start seeing problems with supply chains in China and they're closing down provinces, you have to start thinking about all of the goods and services that are shipped here that won't be shipped here because of the potential that the goods and services may be contaminated with the coronavirus. Then you have to also start thinking about the trade war that we were having with China prior to this pandemic happening. Now, the closest thing to the coronavirus that we can look at is SARS, right? The SARS breakout happened back in 2003. Now, some of you may be wondering, well, what is the coronavirus? And again, I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert in the virus. We're talking about this from a market standpoint. We're not talking about this from the standpoint of the virus and whether it's man-made, whether this is a bioweapon. We're not going to go there. We're just talking about the effect of the market. It says, coronaviruses are a large family of viruses that usually infect animals, but can sometimes evolve and spread to humans. Now, why is this important? Because they're saying that the virus, the origination was at a seafood location in Wuhan where they were trading illegal animals. Now it says physicians have compared it to the 2003 outbreak of SARS, which had a short incubation period of 2 to 7 days. Now, I want to give you some numbers when we talk about the SARS epidemic versus what's happening currently with the coronavirus. There were 8,098 cases of SARS in 2003, and there was 774 deaths. So when we compare that to what's happening here, and this is another good piece of data, you can clearly see that this right here, this is the actual chart. There are way more cases of the coronavirus than there was of the SARS epidemic. And you can see this right here. They have all of the different spots of where there are cases at. Again, I'll put this in the chat for you. But now you have to think about it. The Chinese economy was different in 2003 than it was today. The global economy was different in 2003. As I said, the Chinese economy in 2003 only made up 4.3% of global GDP. That's all of the production, the goods and services of the entire economy of that nation. Well, now they make up 16% of the global economy. They're the largest exporters to most nations. This is going to be extremely, extremely important. It says the continued spread of the coronavirus is more infectious but less severe than the SARS epidemic, health experts have told CNBC. So again, you don't have to panic. This is not as deadly as the SARS epidemic, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be as costly to the economy. I want you to understand that the SARS epidemic of 2003 was much more deadly than the coronavirus. But again, we're talking about the economy and the impacts and the dominoes, and we're going to get to that in a second. So it says, but if 1 million people become infected by the coronavirus, which is not impossible, a 1 or 2% mortality rate would translate as 10,000 or 20,000 deaths, Piot says. So again, it's important that you know these things, and we can set the tone so that we can understand where we're going. So now let's get into the economy. Right now, Disney is saying that they could take a $280 million hit because they have to close down the parks. So now you have to really start extrapolating that and thinking about the broader implications as what this could mean, not just for the Chinese economy, because you got to think about it. If people are fearful, if people are under quarantine, you have 24 provinces in China. The province that's like those major cities, that's like their states. They're not leaving. They're stuck. So that's no economic activity happening. So now you have to think about it. If Disney is a global company and they're taking a $280 million hit, now you have to start asking yourself the question, what is this going to do to the earnings of that company? What is this going to do to employment? Then you have to start thinking about all of the other goods and services that people are not going to be consuming and buying. Because remember, we live in a debt-based economy. We live in a consumer-based economy. Well, if people aren't consuming products, that means corporations aren't making money. If corporations don't make money, then they're going to have to then cut back on their employees, right? They're going to have to fire some people, lay some people off. Well, if they lay people off, what does it do? It keeps the process going, because if you lay people off because they don't have as much money to spend anymore, they stop spending. So it becomes a negative feedback loop where the bad news continues to get worse, which is why you're going to see the government step in and ease. You're going to see the Fed step in and inject liquidity. What does that mean? Money printing. If the government is printing money, if the Fed is printing money, we go back to what assets do you always hear me talk about? Gold and silver. Why do you see gold breaking out? Because the investors are saying to themselves, the only way out of this negative feedback loop is for the government and the Fed and central banks to do monetary policy and fiscal policy. That means printing money that doesn't exist. Look at this. China's box office sales dropped from 1.5 billion to 3.9 million amid the coronavirus panic. You have to really think about that for a second. Look out, that's a major drop. We went from 1.5 billion to 3.9 million. Now, the 24 provinces that are affected by the coronavirus, they make up 80% of China's GDP. 90% of China's exports have basically been shut down. So this is going to have a broad impact, not just on the Chinese economy, but you have to think about Singapore. You have to think about what's happening in India. You have to think about Germany. Literally, all of these economies are interconnected. It says top line, the coronavirus outbreak has ground China's film industry to a halt, with theaters sitting empty and productions paused, causing box office losses of at least 1.5 billion so far in 2020. when the country was instead expected to surpass the United States this year in terms of box office sales. Remember, China is the second largest economy in the world. They was expecting them to surpass the United States in box office sales. So now, again, think about the domino effect here, right? People are not going to the movies because they're stuck in their home. Well, what's going to happen to these production companies if they can't produce the movies and they've taken out these loans? Don't you think that the loans have to get paid back? And we're going to get to that in a second. But you have to really start thinking about this type of stuff. Think about Amazon. Think about all of the small little retailers that sell different chargers and different dongles and pieces that go into, your mobile devices, that chargers that go to your laptops. Well, many of them, they do something known as drop shipping, and they buy their products and services, or they source them from places in China. Well, if the factories and the manufacturers are shut down, what is that going to do for inventory? So we're going to start to really see this stuff play itself out. Remember guys, if this is upgraded to a pandemic. Right now, I'm 50-50 right now. I'm not fully committed to saying flat out panic, but just keep this in mind that they were expecting to surpass the US in box office sales. And now they only did 3.9 million. They've dropped from 1.5 billion to 3.9 million. That is significant. And then it says, crucial quote, if God forbid we're still talking about this virus by summer and theaters are not operating in China is a form of economic paralysis, that impact is way beyond a movie, an unnamed senior U.S. film executive told Variety. Big numbers, 70,000. That's how many of China movie screens have gone dark during the outbreak. 70,000. 70,000 screens basically went blank. Now, you also have to think about, again, we're talking about the supply chain. Well, we know Apple is one of the largest retailers in the world. And Foxconn is basically the place that makes the parts and makes the phones. It says Apple iPhone maker Foxconn said on Thursday it is cautiously restarting production at its main plants in China and warned revenue will be hurt this year by the coronavirus epidemic. The statement comes just days after Apple rescinded its March quarter sales guidance, saying factories in China have been slower to get back to work than first anticipated after the Lunar New Year holidays were extended amid the outbreak. Foxconn, the world's #1 contract manufacturer, also said its plants in countries such as Vietnam, India, and Mexico continue to operate at full capacity, with expansion plans underway as it seeks to minimize the impact of the virus. And this is why I said you can't be too fearful right now. You can't be one of those people who's saying the world's going to end, because you can see that these companies are putting in contingency plans where now they're trying to ramp up production in places like Vietnam, India, and Mexico to make up for the supply disruption in China. But see, here's the problem. What if the coronavirus spreads to Vietnam, India, and Mexico? What if you see a major outbreak and we get upgraded from an epidemic to a pandemic in Vietnam, India, and Mexico? Which is why you have to be a three-dimensional thinker, and you have to monitor this, not from the fear standpoint, not fearful, but just being alert and being aware as to where this could go, right? Because if we see a major spread in India and a major spread in Mexico, well, then that's just going to exasperate the problem, because now nowhere can produce, nowhere can manufacture, and nowhere can ship. So this is extremely important. Now, let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to the money. Remember before I was talking to you about something known as fractional reserve banking. And I was explaining this to you, and some of you guys were saying you really didn't get this. When you hear me say print money out of thin air, when you hear me say create money, that's literally what banks do. When you hear me say debt is money, and that the dollar's not backed by the military, it's not backed by the government, they're not going to come shoot you because you didn't pay your mortgage, it's backed by debt. Banks are allowed to create money out of nothing. Now, it says, what is fractional reserve banking? Fractional reserve banking is a system in which only a fraction of bank deposits are backed by actual cash on hand and available for withdrawal. This is done to theoretically expand the economy by freeing capital for lending. I'm going somewhere with this. This is important. You need to pay attention to this. Banks are required to keep on hand a certain amount of cash that depositors give them, but banks are not required. To keep the entire amount on hand. Most banks are required to keep 10% of deposits referred to as reserves. So they only have to keep, if you put $1,000 in the bank, they only have to keep $100 on hand. They can take your $900 and they can lend it out and make interest on that money, and they don't pay you any interest on that money. Now, why am I talking about this? Because what you're starting to see in China is you're starting to see bank runs. See, what happens is, and this is where all of the bailouts come at, and the repo market and all of these schemes that the Fed creates. These are people who are lining up at the bank because they want to get their money out, right? These people right here are lining up to get their money out the bank. But guess what? Because of fractional reserve lending, the bank doesn't have all of the deposits to give people. So you get what is known as a bank holiday. And I'm going to play this for you so you can see. And this is where now, when people say, well, Bitcoin has no value, this is the value of a Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency. So, when you hear people say to you, Bitcoin doesn't have any value because it doesn't create anything. If I have my private key, if I have my ledger, I don't have to go stand on that line to get access to my money. I can access my money digitally. I don't have to worry about the bank locking me out my account because it's decentralized. There is no central authority. There's no middleman that can tell me I can't get my money. See, when you bank at Chase, at Wells Fargo, they can say to you, we're having a bank holiday and you can't get your money out. They can lock you out your account. So when people say to you, well, what does Bitcoin do? Why do you need Bitcoin? It's decentralized. No one owns it. No one controls it. It's permissionless. It's borderless. I can load my money up. I don't got to go wait on that line, because now you got to think, if there's a virus happening, don't you think all of these people getting together is only going to help spread the virus even more? So now you're risking infection just to go get your money. So when people say, what's the value of you're living and witnessing the value of a Bitcoin, then again, now you have to start thinking, what is smart money saying? What is gold telling you? Well, if fractional reserve lending is happening, banking is happening, and there's runs on a bank, that means that central banks are going to have to inject liquidity. What do you constantly hear me say? When you hear quantitative easing, inject liquidity, debt monetization, that is printing money out of thin air. You are printing money that does not exist to paper over losses because they've loaned out so much money. Now remember, what did I talk about? This feedback loop of negativity. If the plants are shut down and people aren't working, people don't have money. Well, if people aren't going into debt, if people aren't buying new goods and services, that means corporations aren't making money. Well, if corporations aren't making money and they've borrowed a whole bunch of money to finance their operations, that means they can't pay back the bank. Well, if the bank can't get paid back and they've created derivatives based off of securitization, well, then now the creditors can't get paid money. So you get this negative feedback loop of the entire economy spiraling out of control. And this is known as deflation, right? Governments and central bankers love inflation. Fractional reserve banking is all based upon inflation. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you in real time, right? Because I know a lot of you are thinking, oh, he's just making this up. So let's flip over to my iPad screen. I'm going to show you in real time how fractional reserve banking works. There's 140 of you watching this. Please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. It's important to get this information out to people. Right now, let's make sure I can write on this so I can see my screen. Okay, so this is important here. Let me make sure my screen is up. Yep, okay, my screen's up. So, you are Alice. You go to Chase and you deposit $100. The bank says, okay, they take your $100. They hold $20. Now remember, I said they can go up to 90%. They don't have to do 90. Some banks do 60% and they hold 40% reserves, right? So right now, this is just based off of 80%. The bank takes your $100. They only hold 20 because they say, hey, Alice doesn't come take her money out the bank all the time because most people don't withdraw their money. They leave their money sitting in banks. And then the bank takes $80 of your $100 and they loan it out and they create interest. They just created an asset off of your money. Follow me. I'm going to repeat it again because I know some of you may not get it. You go to the bank, you put $100 in there. The bank says, we know Alice isn't going to come get this money. So they only hold $20 in reserves. That's the minimum that they want to hold. They take $80 of your $100 and they loan it out and they charge interest. Now here's how it gets. This is the most intriguing part about it, where it starts to really blow your mind. That $80 then ends up in another bank. So let's say you bank with Chase, but they loaned that money out to Bob, and Bob banks with Wells Fargo. Well, that $80 gets deposited into Wells Fargo. And what does Wells Fargo do? Wells Fargo say, hey, we like to do fractional reserve lending. We want to be just like Chase. So they only hold $16 of your money and they then loan out $64. You have to really follow this. So then now that $64 is out in the economy. That $64 ends up in Bank of America. So now somebody deposits $64 in Bank of America. Bank of America say, hey, we want to be like Chase and Wells Fargo, so we're only going to hold $12 and we're going to loan out $51. They keep this process going on and on and on to eventually that $100 deposit that Alice put in Chase, it turns into $446.31. You know the total reserves that the bank has on hold? They only have $100 in reserves. Now, how much money did they create out of thin air? They created $346.31. They created that. Now, someone borrowed that money into existence, which gives the dollar demand. Why? Because you have to keep working for the dollar to pay back your debt because your debts are denominated in dollars. So they were able to take a $100 investment, but through fractional reserve banking, they created $346 of new money. But see, here's where the problem comes, because this is known as the boom and bust cycle. Well, okay, this creates a boom because everybody's borrowing money, right? People are getting new cars. New businesses are starting. People are ordering new parts and pieces for their companies. People are getting new credit cards. People are buying homes. That's the boom. Everybody's thinking, oh my God, the economy's doing well. But then something like the coronavirus happens. And now Alice and Bob and Susie, who borrowed all of this money, they can't pay it back because they're not working and they're not earning money. And then now the company that they work for, because they're not making profit from selling their products and services, they can't make their accounts receivables. They can't pay their banks back. They can't pay back their loans. So this is when now the Fed comes into play, because the Fed is afraid of deflation. They need to create more inflation, which is how you get quantitative easing 1, QE2, QE3, QE forever. This is how you get them jumping into the repo market. This is extremely important that you pay for this type of stuff. I mean, pay attention to this type of stuff. I just showed you how literally they basically are just creating money out of thin air. And this is just one example. Guys, I can get so technical where we can go into talking about the derivatives market. We can talk about CDO squared, but I like to keep things basic. So when people say to you, what is the value of gold and silver? What is the value of a Bitcoin? This is hard money that is outside of the traditional banking system. So when things go haywire and they go crazy and everybody's running for liquidity and there is no liquidity, you know where the liquidity's at. I know for a fact there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. I can verify that through the code. We don't know how much money is truly in circulation. We just don't know because you start getting into the derivatives. And when I say money, I'm talking about debt because remember, debt is money. Now, why do I always bring up this chart? It's important that you see this to understand. I said this before, based upon cash reserves, there's less than $1.6 trillion of available cash in most banks. Well, there's over $74 trillion of debt in the system. There's over $74 trillion of debt in the system. So there's more debt in the system than there's actual physical cash to pay for the debt. And most of this debt, like I said, is created out of thin air. When you go to get your car loan, it's just created out of thin air. Now, again, guys, there's 152 of you watching this. Please, guys, hit that like button. Now, why did I bring this up? Because I want you to see the bank run. Again, if we start seeing this spread, you have to start thinking about this. What this could mean for the overall global economy. Now, this is the Financial Times, and I want to put this into the chat because I believe in you guys fact checking me. If you think anything that I'm saying isn't true or I'm exaggerating, please, guys, go and look this up. So it says the coronavirus outbreak spells trouble for China's banks. Excuse me, because this goes into fractional reserve lending and creating money out of thin air. It says, if the coronavirus outbreak keeps Wang Zi's shoe factory closed for much longer, the Chinese entrepreneur reckons he will default on his loan coming due in June. With no end in sight to the health emergency that has killed more than 1,100 people across China, it is small corporate defaults such as this that threaten to cause big trouble for the country's banks. Now, remember, this is from February 12th. Today is the 24th. There's over 2,600 people now that have died. There's over 77,000 cases, and that's if you believe the data that China is giving you. And we know that China is the great firewall. We don't believe that. So now you have to think about it. If Wang Zi's shoe factory doesn't get back into production and he doesn't get back to making money, well, there's going to be a problem, right? Because Wang Zi needs to make money so that he could pay his loans back. Well, it doesn't look like Wang Zi is going to be able to pay back his loans. And if he can't pay back the loans, that creates the spiraling aspect. Now, it says bad debt across the banking system could rise from less than 2% at the end of last year to 6.3% of total assets, S&P research shows, a level not seen for 2 decades. In response, financial regulators have been forced to roll back recent sector reforms in order banks to extend the terms of lending for business people such as Mr. Wang, delaying the creation of new bad debt for at least a little longer. This is extremely important, guys. This is extremely important that you guys pay attention to this. Because again, what did I say? This is that negative feedback loop. This is the negative feedback loop. Because again, if the factory is closed, he's not selling shoes, he's not selling product, he's not making money. He's not making money, he can't pay back his loans. If he can't pay back the loans, the banks are already struggling because interest rates are too low. So it's hard for banks to make money. It creates this feedback loop. Banks stop lending. Banks stop lending, people stop making money. People stop making money, people stop working, people stop buying goods and services, people become fearful. This will definitely impact the greater economy because it will spread. It says China's banking system is already in rough shape. A decade of excessive credit growth has saddled China's lenders with heavy bad debts, sharply declining economic growth at a 29-year low in 2019, and the trade war with the U.S. have put additional pressure on balance sheets over the past 2 years. Give me 1 second, guys. It looks like my stream is not up to date. Wait, hold on. Let me see something. Give me 1 second, guys. Something's not right. Give me 1 second. I don't see my stream up to date. My screen looks like it's stuck. Oh, yep. See? Wow. So I got to go back, guys. I'm so sorry about that. I was reading an article and my screen was stuck. So this goes back to the article I want to share with you. My screen was stuck. It says, coronavirus outbreak spells trouble for banks, for China's banks. It says if coronavirus outbreak keeps Wang Zi's shoe factory closed for much longer, the Chinese entrepreneur reckons he will default on a loan coming due in June. With no end in sight to the health emergency that has killed more than 1,100 people across China, it's small corporate defaults such as this that threaten to cause big trouble in the country's banks. I'm so sorry, guys. It was still on the iPad. I didn't know that. I have to get used to the new way that I'm streaming. Sorry about that, guys. It says China's banking sector is already in rough shape. A decade of excessive credit growth has saddled China's lenders with heavy bad debts, sharply declining economic growth at a 29-year low in 2019, and the trade war with the U.S. have put additional pressure on balance sheets over the past 2 decades. So again, when you hear them say excessive credit growth, I just showed you how they grow credit, right? Basically, they were creating a bunch of money out of thin air. And what happened was when the trade war happened, it started to contract the growth. Well, if growth begins to contract, what happens? You get this negative feedback loop. And then now, because central banks have interest rates so low, everyone's at 1% or 2%. Some places in Europe are at negative interest rates. Central banks can't cut interest rates anymore. There's no more monetary policy. Well, you look at fiscal policy. There's but so much you can cut, run deficits, right? Trump's already running $1 trillion+ deficit. At a certain point, there's not going to be enough investors in your bonds and in your government debt. So what does that mean? The Fed is going to have to print money out of thin air and do what? Monetize debt. So what does that mean? We go back here. This is the value proposition of Bitcoin. This is the value proposition of an Ethereum. This is the value proposition of these type of cryptocurrencies, these proof of work coins that have hard caps. This is what you have to start to think about and educate yourself on this. This is not about trying to scare you. This is just simply about warning you. Again, I believe that the Fed is going to step in and fix this. I believe that the government is going to step in and fix this before it spirals out of control. But you still need to be aware of this. This is the value proposition of cryptocurrencies. This is why you own gold, because these things are outside of the traditional banking sector and banking system. You can't just print gold. You have to go get equipment and people. You have to find a location and you have to go and dig and mine it. It takes resources to find gold. This is why gold has always been money. You can't use cattle as money because cattle, you got to eat it. You use it, it can die, right? Commodities can spoil. So you want to use something that's scarce. If you spend your time working for $50,000, you want to make sure that you get paid in $50,000, that your $50,000 is worth $50,000, and you want it to be worth $50,000 5 years from now. Now, let's look at what's happening so we can see the economic impact. Look at the subway. It's empty. Subway's empty. Now what does this look like if this comes to China? I mean, if this was happening in China comes to the US, if this is in New York City. What does this look like if this is happening in San Francisco and parts of LA? You have to really start asking yourself these questions. And again, this is not to scare you. This is to inform you. I'm not saying the world's going to end tomorrow. What I'm telling you to get you to understand is that this is how economies move. This is how markets move. They're dynamic, right? Let's look at this. Look at how they're just snatching people up off the street. Remember, this is a dictatorship. This is a communist dictatorship. Right? Now, remember I said to you earlier that it started to spread into places like Italy and South Korea. Look at the people starting to line up and buy stuff. Look at the lines happening. Right? Now again, you don't want to be one of these people waiting to the last minute to go and start shopping. Look at the shelves. You don't want to wait to the last minute. You want to make sure that you're stocking up on your goods. Again, this is not to scare you. This is not telling you the world's going to end. This could very well just stay an epidemic and not turn into a pandemic. You have to be a three-dimensional thinker. But do you want to wait till it's a pandemic and then try to go to the grocery store? This goes back to liquidity. See, everybody waits until the last minute to want to get out of a trade. Everyone waits to the last minute to want to go and buy the groceries, the water, the supplies. You have to start thinking a little bit further ahead and start saying to yourself, just look at the spread. They're snatching people away. They're snatching mothers away from their children. That's not here, guys. This is in China. This is in China. The shelves I showed you is in Italy. This is what's happening in Italy because this is what sparked the markets to sell off today. Sorry for that. I should give you guys better context. I'm sorry about that, guys. So as of right now, this is up to date, guys. There's 80,150 total cases. There's 2,701 deaths. This is globally, right? This is all of the different places. What really sparked the market to sell off is that, remember, currently it's an epidemic. For it to get upgraded to a pandemic, you need to start seeing a spread to various continents and countries, and it needs to be sustained. Well, when we woke up this morning, Iran started having infections of the virus, breakouts, and then we seen Italy start having breakouts, and then we had South Korea. So when you start seeing that happening, now people are saying, okay, the virus is starting to accelerate. It's accelerating. So now people are saying to themselves, okay, this may get upgraded to a pandemic. Now remember, if we're 3 weeks behind China, and China's already quarantined 24 provinces, China is the second largest economy. Now you're starting to see other world governments in the WHO, they're starting to say to themselves, okay, we need to get out in front of this. So what I'm saying to you is that if we're 2 to 3 weeks behind, you got to start thinking about where does this go, right? Again, you have to start thinking about this. This is what's happening in China. This is basically martial law. But remember, this is a communist country. Again, guys, it's not to scare. This is to educate you. This is to get you to understand what's going on. You can see that this is what's happening over in China. And these are just some clips I put together so that you can see these are the lines that are starting to pop up. This is in Italy right here, what I'm showing you right now. This video right here is in Italy. And guys, there's 164 of you watching the video. Please like the video, share the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell. It helps the content get out there so that more and more people can get this information. It is extremely important that you understand this. So again, as I said before, I'm not scaring you guys. I'm just informing you guys so that you can understand what could be the potential and where this could go. Small time. That's a great question. I plan on doing a live stream about that tomorrow, as far as to what are going to be some of the solutions that are going to be put in place as far as a vaccine, as far as quarantine is concerned, if it made its way over here to the US in a major way and it gets upgraded to a pandemic. Again, as of right now today, I want to be very clear with you guys. It is simply just an epidemic. It has not reached that point to where it's a pandemic. Thank you to the guys. Thank you, TD Hip Hop Media, and to the individual who donated earlier. I didn't get a chance to see that donation. Let me see if I can see it in my thing. Thank you for the person who donated earlier. I just can't see it right now. I'm so sorry about that, guys. I can't go back and see it, but thank you. So we can see the shelves are empty. I make sure that I stock up. I have at least 5 to 6 cases of water, clean water, making sure you just have medical supplies. Again, this is stuff that you should basically be doing and understanding what's going on, because China is under pressure, because they are the second largest economy. They're beginning to start to send people back to work. See, Toyota restarts the final Chinese plant shut by virus outbreak. So they're starting to send people back to work. And Foxconn, because there's pressure to get the economy moving again, because as I said before, the 24 provinces that they shut down, it makes up 80% of their GDP. That's their gross domestic product. But again, most problems don't start in the general economy. They start in the banking sector. And again, if we go here to this article, and this will be the last article before I take some questions, it says millions of Chinese firms face collapse if banks don't act. This goes back to what I was saying about fractional reserve lending, and it's important that you understand this, because like, as I said before, it's much more intricate and complicated, but I like to give you things in a simple way. It says virus outbreak puts millions of small businesses at risk. Banks have extended help to companies in direct path of viruses. It says, I don't even know how to say this name. I'm just going to say Bridget, a director at one of China's largest car dealers, is running out of options. Now, remember, we just had Wang Zi, excuse me, at the shoe company. Now we have a person at a car dealership. Her firm's 100 outlets have been closed for about a month because of the coronavirus. Cash reserves are dwindling, and banks are reluctant to extend deadlines on billions of yuan in debt coming due over the next few months. See where I'm going with this? Again, the negative feedback loop. Thank you, Nasir Cooper. She says, if we can't pay back the bonds, right? Oh, no, this is what the creditors are saying. If we can't pay back the bonds, it will be very, very bad, said Brigida, whose company has 10,000 employees and sells mid to high-end car brands such as BMWs. So think about it. She's saying that it's going to be bad, that if she can't pay back the banks who loaned her money, how the hell is she going to be able to pay the employees if she's not selling cars? Well, what happens to these 10,000 employees if they don't work? Because China's also a large consumer of luxury items. A lot of luxury retailers sell, like Ralph Lauren and Nike and Versace and Louis Vuitton. A survey of small and medium-sized Chinese companies conducted this month shows that a third of respondents only had enough cash to cover fixed expenses for a month. A third of respondents only had enough cash to cover fixed expenses for a month. Because that goes back to what I was saying to you before. There's more debt in these systems than there's actual physical cash. There's not enough liquidity. So if you get any one of these supply shocks, if you get any shock to the economy, most of these businesses are bankrupt. Most of the banks are bankrupt, which is why the Fed is having to go into the repo market in the first place to bail out the banks, because they create money out of thin air. And then what happens is when you have to write down loans, there's no more money coming in. Now, 30% of such firms have managed to resume operations due to a complicated local government approval procedure, as well as a lack of employees and financing, a government official said at a press conference on Monday. While China's government has cut interest rates, ordered banks to boost lending, and loosened criteria for companies to restart operations, many of the nation's private businesses say they've been unable to access the funding they need to meet upcoming deadlines for debt and salary payments. Without more financial support or a sudden rebound in China's economy, some may have to shut for good. Now understand this, because this goes back to the recession that happened in 2008, when Obama and Hank Paulson and Timothy Geithner, they gave all of that bailout money to the banks. And the banks didn't go and lend the money out in the economy. Instead, they hoarded the money. Because what happened was the banks internally knew that they had a lot of bad loans on their balance sheet. And see, this is what I said before, where things start to get technical and complicated. Because the banks knew that they can't loan this money out because they're basically bankrupt, because they created a bunch of money out of thin air. And now you gotta be able to read between the lines. You gotta be able to put pieces of the puzzle together. They're saying that they're unable to access the funding. Well, what happened when Obama did? It was a mortgage program that Obama passed. I forgot what it was called, and people were supposed to be able to refinance their mortgages, but the banks weren't letting them refi. Instead, what the banks were doing, they were holding on to all of the money. When they got the TARP and the TALF packages, I forgot the exact name of the program, but they were supposed to help people, adjust their mortgages and give them better rates on their mortgages, and they chose not to do it. Now, why am I talking about this? Because if you go back to this article, right, it says a decade of excessive credit growth has saddled China's lenders with heavy bad debts, sharply declining economic growth. So these banks, the lenders, they have heavy bad debts. So when they get this newly printed money from their central bank, do you really think that they're going to loan the money out to the people in the economy? No, they're going to keep it to paper over their losses. And this is why you have to really start understanding this. And again, it's not about being scared. It's about educating yourself. This is the value of Bitcoin. No one creates it. No one owns it. No one can just print more Bitcoin. You can't make more Bitcoin. You have to mine them. And when we get to 2136, there will be, you only will be 21 million Bitcoin. There will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin, because there's a block subsidy built into each transaction. It's called the Coinbase transaction. And this is why the halving happens. Every 4 years, the block subsidy gets cut into half, where there will be no more. This is known as hard money. When people talk about gold and silver, that's hard money. You can't print more gold. You can't print more silver. You have to go and find it. Now, remember, I talked to you about the stock to flow ratio. You need to be buying Bitcoin. You need to be buying Ethereum. You need to be, and again, this is not financial advice. I'm just telling you how things work and how markets work. If you go back to my channel, I've been talking about Bitcoin on this channel back when Bitcoin was trading around $5,000 in a coin. I've been talking about gold. Let's see. We go back to the chart here, the GC chart. We were talking about this in April of last year. So gold was trading at $12.80 an ounce. It's a reason why this is considered money. So with that being said, I'll take some questions now, because we're coming up on, I think, about an hour. So let's see what kind of questions we have. Let's go to the chat. Great presentation. Thank you, Zulu Immortal. We have the highest scientists that can solve this outbreak. I believe, guys, I'm not saying that the outbreak can't be solved. I'm not saying that you should run out tomorrow and take your entire life savings and buy gold and crypto. What I'm saying is I'm informing you as the value proposition. Debt is owed to your creditors, the people who brought your bonds, who brought your government debt. It's pension funds who hold your debt, right? Like, so you got to think about it, right? Like, people always say that, well, who's the debt owed to? If I'm the pension fund of California, if I'm CalPERS, and I'm holding $100 million of U.S. treasuries, the United States can't just default on that $100 million, because that $100 million has to go to people so that they can retire. That money See, what people don't understand is that the money may have been created out of thin air, but people actually worked for that money. The people who loaned the money to you, who brought your bonds, who brought your treasuries, your T-bills, they worked for 40 years. You can't just say, hey, I'm not paying you back. You have to pay the people. That's just one example. I've started purchasing military meals and storing it away for my wife and kids. There's nothing wrong with that, Grace Media, but you don't have to be, guys, you don't have to be fearful. There's opportunity. You can short this market. See, what a lot of you guys don't understand, markets go up and markets go down. The guy from The Big Short, he killed it. Michael Burry killed it. He shorted the housing market, right? So you don't be fearful, right? Like, you have to be greedy when others is fearful and be fearful when others is greedy. You have to be a dynamic thinker. Now, if you're not a market participant, I get it. Some of you think that trading and investing is gambling, and I understand it. It's okay. Well, then just, protect your pension, protect your family, right? Understand that you don't want to be on a breadline. You don't want to be, when there's a pandemic, having to go outside and stand on big lines. Because if there's a pandemic, right, let's just use our brain. If there's a pandemic and you have to go out here and wait in this line to go get cash, you risk the potential of getting infected. And then if you get infected, you're going to go back and infect your family. But being diversified is the best way. But this is when you hear people say you don't need cryptocurrency. Yes, you do. You would be a fool to believe that you don't need hard, sound money. Only a fool would say that. If the U.S. is broke, don't they need resources, natural resources from Iran? Not necessarily. You don't necessarily need resources. Like, you can just go take them. If that's the case. I purchased from Amazon in another company. I still need to learn about options. Waking up every day is a gamble. True. Bitcoin is sanitary. Yes, Bitcoin's very sanitary. It's a scrub. Why does the coronavirus create opportunities? Because, as I just showed you, look at the markets. Somebody caught this 1,000-point move down. Think about this. When the Dow drops 1,000 points, somebody owns put options. Somebody owns call options where they're going to be able to buy back in at a lower price. Somebody is shorting individual stock names. Somebody's probably buying up the GDXJ. Somebody's probably buying the triple bear, the triple bull, as far as gold ETFs is concerned. Markets are moving, right? When markets move, someone's on the other side of the trade. See, what people don't understand is trading is facilitated two ways. For every buyer, there's a seller, and for every seller, there's a buyer. So all of the people who are long the market, well, that means that people who want to go short, like, for example, who want to buy puts in the market or do some type of butterfly spreads, premiums are not that expensive. It's cheap. You can get options for pennies on a dollar. And then you get this type of spike down with volatility spikes. Well, those options become worth a hell of a lot of money. So you have to really start thinking about the opportunity. And again, I'm not telling you to go out and do this type of stuff. I'm telling you to take the time and educate yourself. Go watch the movie The Big Short. The guy from The Big Short, Michael Burry, shorted the housing market. And I think he made $1 billion per month shorting the housing market. There's opportunity. Think about subprime lending and auto loans right now. Like, let me show you a story I came across. Let me show you an article. Banks are, hold on. Give me 1 second. I'm pull up this article for you guys. What's it called? Dealerships. Telling people not to pay loans. I think that's the article. Yeah, let me pull it up. I think it was on MSN, right? Pull it up. Somebody right here. MSN. Watch when you hear this. Let me read this article for you. Right? Remember I was talking to you about auto loan debt the other day, right? Right? So it says, dealerships give car buyers some advice. Just stop paying your loan. Joyce Parks was struggling to afford her Kia Soul when she says the dealership where she had brought it pitched her an unconventional idea. Stop making your payments. Miss Parks, 63, says employees told her that she couldn't trade in the Soul, but that she could buy another car to get rid of the Soul. The dealership told her she should have the lender repossess it, Ms. Park said. The trade-in, whereby a buyer hands a car back to the dealership and uses it as credit towards another one, is often a crucial step in car buying. But some dealerships are instead telling buyers to give their old cars back to their lenders and selling them new ones in a practice known as kicking the trade. So what they're telling people is, hey, even if your credit's messed up, because this is subprime lending, you can't afford to pay that car because that car is $600 a month. But if you let the lender repossess it, I can put you in a newer car. It may not be as good as this car, but at a lower payment. So now, what does that tell someone like me? That's subprime lending all over again. Because if Joyce can't pay the $600 car, I know she ain't going to be able to pay the $400 car either. Because Joyce got problems, right? Joyce got money problems. And they mainly do this to black people. I'm going to be honest with you. This is predatory lending that they do towards black people. Because a lot of black people aren't financially literate. And again, I'm not trying to make this a race thing. Guys. So please, just bear with me now. Because a lot of people low-income people tend to not really be that financially literate, she doesn't understand that the car payment may be cheaper, but the interest rate is going to be higher because it's subprime. So she's going to end up probably paying the same amount for the car. And then her credit is going to be destroyed even worse because that's going to go on her credit report. See, this is subprime lending, right? Now, I want to know who are the people doing this type of lending, because I know Grace is going to default. And I know when Grace defaults on that paper, I know that they're underwriting it. So I want to know who's holding that paper, because I want to be short that company, whether it's through options or I want to be short through their creditors. This is how people start thinking, right? You have to, as an investor, this is how I start thinking. I start looking and putting the pieces of the puzzle together, it's a guy by the name of Jay Morrison that I'm following, because a lot of the people that he deal with, they deal with subprime lending. See, when you start watching people, the game, it's right in front of your face. Those are going to be the first loans that go bad. That's so you can be an investor. Some people, all they do is short sell companies. So, but again, I don't want to say too much here. I'll leave it there. So let's take some more questions. Thank you for the donation. It's a scrub. Gold, 60K a kilo. The better investment, the spare, is actually silver. Silver has not tracked well with gold. Silver has a look at silver. Look at this chart at silver. Look at this silver chart here. Guys, I just want you to think about this. Let's move this out the way. Right? Look at this. Silver has not broken out yet. Yeah, I didn't say Jay Morrison does subprime lending. I said he hangs out with a lot. I wanted to correct myself. He hangs out with a lot of guys that operate in that space when it comes to auto loans. And that's all I'm going to say. I want to correct myself. I don't want to put any negative information out on Jay Morrison. This is not an attack on Jay Morrison. Jay Morrison's a great guy, great husband, great businessman. I was just giving you an example of the subprime lending industry, that he has people that are close to him that do a lot of subprime lending, is what I'm going to say. But if you look at silver, right, if you just simply, if you get into the technicals, right, look what happened, right? Most people who they do technical analysis, I'm not into technical analysis. I like to look at more deeper stuff than that. But look at this. We broke out, but we just moved sideways. Silver has been doing nothing but moving sideways. Now, this is an industrial metal. Now think about this. Look at the upside. Look at the upside you have on silver as an investor. The high is up here at $50. It's back in 2011. Right? So silver, if you're just looking as far as, risk to reward, silver has much more reward than gold has as far as a long-term investment, because gold's already breaking out. Right? Gold is already on its pace to breaking out. So you have to look at it like that. Right? And it's the same thing if you look at crypto. Ethereum is going to give you a better risk to reward just for the look at the market cap. Ethereum sitting at $28 billion. Bitcoin's market cap's at 173 billion. So it's going to take less money to pump Ethereum than it is going to take to pump Bitcoin. And I look at Ethereum as if we have an altcoin season, right? Because all of these coins are known as altcoins, right? So if we have an altcoin season and all of these altcoins start to pump, well, Ethereum is going to start to pump. I look at Ethereum as like an ETF for me, like a barometer for all of the altcoins. So like if I'm looking for a better risk to reward, if I'm trying to 3x or 4x or 5x my money, Ethereum is where I would want to put my money. Again, this is not financial advice. Again, I'm just talking to you of how I think about markets and how I look at things and how I analyze things. I always love silver. I'm not interested in none of those ish. Silver is roughly 17 per ounce. Real estate loans might go bad. I wonder how the Tulsa real estate program going, Mr. Richie Rich. I started looking into the Tulsa real estate program, Grace Media, and then after a while, I just was like, I don't want to sit up here and just bash people all day. So I just said, you know what? I'm gonna let Jay do his thing and mind my business. It's the same thing with Umar and Polite and all these people. I'm going to let these people do their own thing. Let them go on. You mean Tezos? Tezos is one of my largest positions. I'm up big in Tezos. If you pull up Tezos, I am making a lot of money in Tezos. Tezos has made me a lot of money over the past year. If you look at the chart of Tezos, look at this. We went from $1.50 all the way up to $3.50. So Tezos is making me some really, really good money. Tezos is a protocol, but you have to understand they haven't built anything yet. So, and then you have where you can stake the coins. They have lending, the whole DeFi space, and that's why I said I want to get into crypto. Guys, like the video. There's 145 of you watching the video. Please like the video. I really want to create a lot of crypto content, but what you're starting to see happen is that a lot of crypto channels are starting to get flagged, right? Because YouTube views cryptocurrency as an unregulated asset, which it is technically, right? It's unregulated. So Ivan on Tech, I said Ivan Trump. Hold on, let me move this. Give me 1 second. Let me just find what I was looking for. Give me 1 second. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about right now. Ivan on Tech. Right? So, see if I can find him. He actually blocked me, which is okay. He blocked me because I was being critical of him. But Ivan on Tech had his crypto channel basically, one of his videos were flagged. So I want to make crypto content, but I know that YouTube doesn't want crypto content on the platform, which is why I was trying to make a Patreon. But the problem is when I put the poll up, most people said they're not interested in a Patreon. So you have to understand, like, to make crypto content, like, for example, how I went here, and let me show you the iPad, how I broke down fractional reserve lending. This is what I would do if I was to create a Patreon. I would do a live stream like this for private people who are paying on the Patreon, and I would sit down and I would walk you through what a blockchain is, what is the ECDSA algorithm, what is SHA-256. I would break down the mining, talk about hashing, really go into like computer science technical terms, how blockchains work, how nodes communicate with each other. But that type of stuff is, it's technical stuff, and it's not something that you can just put together in 5 minutes. So I don't want to make a presentation for just 3 people. Like, if I'm going to sit up here and teach you about cryptocurrencies and blockchains and how blockchains work together and stuff like that, I got to at least have a good amount of people. You know what I'm saying? But like how I broke down, the whole fractional reserve lending, and I talked to you about the $100 and how they can turn $100 into $446. That's what I want to do with the channel. And I would put that on the Patreon, and I would talk to you about different protocols such as nulls, such as Atom, Ethereum, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where we would go from there. But again, like I said before, I would want to have at least like 20 or 30 people interested to make it worth my while. Where like, because this is really technical stuff, and it costs me thousands of dollars to learn this type of stuff. So I would not want to give it away for free, and I'm not going to sit here and just talk to 10 people. So that's why I wouldn't do it. Ivan on Tech and the other crypto YouTubers be promoting leverage trading and getting gullible viewers to do it and lose their money because they don't know what they're doing. Yeah, that's why he blocked me, because I said to him, and you can see, look, just so you can see that I'm not lying to you, let me show you right now, right? Look, he blocked me. So you can see, guys, I'm not lying. He blocked me because I said to him, you know me, guys, I'm a straight shooter. I'm going to tell it how it is. His titles are too hypey, right? He's a pumper. Like you don't have to make a hypey title. If people like your information, they're going to come. Now, yes, I get it. Obviously, the more hype you get, the gullible people, like you said, Musa's descendant. But I don't want hype people. I want real people who want to do stuff with the technology. Bitcoin is technology. It's a protocol. Right? It's not some, thing that some guy just made in his basement. Like, this is computer science. This is math. This is physics. This is really important stuff. So, when you're teaching people or you're bringing people on, you have a right to be honest with people and tell them the truth and not sell them Bybit and leverage trading. Guys, it took me years before I become a profitable trader. You're not going to just read some book and learn how to trade. This stuff takes time. This is money. This is business. You're competing with high frequency traders. You're competing with people who have business degrees from Wharton and people who are, astrophysicists and computer engineers and electrical engineers who went to Harvard and Yale and Penn. This is really serious stuff. So if you're going to get into this space, you got to really, really, be serious and be dedicated. That's why I say, like this guy was saying, he'll only pay $5. Man, you're crazy. Blockchain technology is going to be the future. And that goes back to, thank you for the donation, the Spear. Good video, my guy. P.S. Does DeFi equal double spend? In my opinion, it is. Of course, because a lot of people don't what you just said, the Spear, ties into what I was saying about teaching people. You have to understand what a smart contract is. Like when you sit down and you try to teach people stuff, right? Like people just throw out these terms like, smart contracts, blockchain. Well, what is a blockchain? A blockchain is just a database. It's a distributive ledger, right? So why go with a blockchain? You can just go with a SQL database. It's cheaper and it's more efficient than going with the blockchain. Right? The whole purpose of blockchains is the decentralization aspect of it. But a lot of people don't even know this. They don't know the value proposition and the trade-offs in design and, why this blockchain is useless and that blockchain isn't, which goes back to what TD Hip Hop just asked me about Ripple. XRP, it's garbage. Now, that doesn't mean you can't make money. See, guys, understand, this is about being dynamic. The technology that Ripple's offering is garbage. It's a centralized coin. And the problem with centralized coins is you're not escaping the banking system. The whole value proposition is the decentralization aspect, right? Ripple's just trying to make a better version of Swift. I mean, seriously, that's not something that's needed. Now, the Spirit said 10K XRP will give you money when it pumps. Of course, all of these coins are going to pump, guys. Guys, dented coin, BitConnect was a top 20 cryptocurrency. Think about this, guys. BitConnect was a Ponzi scheme. It was a top 20 cryptocurrency. I'm not saying that Ripple can't pump. I'm saying the technology, it's not decentralized. It's a centralized coin. And the problem with centralization is you don't know how many is in existence. They can always change the consensus protocol. They can change the rules. You can't change the rules with Bitcoin. There will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. Right? It's built into the protocol. That's what you're investing in, a decentralized aspect of Bitcoin that no one owns it, no one controls it. With Ripple, that's a centralized entity. So that's what I'm trying to get y'all to understand, guys. Like, there's trade-offs in design. Like, there's nothing unique or special about Ripple. You don't need it. ETH works with banks now. Why isn't it a banker's coin? It is a banker's coin. I mean, they've rolled back their chain before. You have to think about it. Like Vitalik, Ethereum is centralized as well because it's all based upon Vitalik or what people perceive of Vitalik. No one owns or controls Bitcoin. Now, one of the knocks on Bitcoin is that the mining is heavily centralized in China, but that's about it. XRP has real world utility. No, it doesn't. It doesn't have real world utility. You need to stop letting people say that to you. This is just not true. It doesn't even work yet. Of course you can't download the entire XRP blockchain because a lot of you don't even know how many XRP exist. But that's a whole nother video. So, it's not about utility. It's about the whole purpose of Bitcoin is to be permissionless, is to be borderless, is not to have a central entity control it. That's the whole purpose of crypto. The whole presentation that I just did to you was telling you the problem with central authority. This is centralization, guys. This is centralization. This is the traditional banking system. You go to the bank, they're closed. They say you can't get your money. That's Ripple. That's Ripple. Ripple is a centralized coin. Ripple is a bunch of guys behind the scenes saying what can and will happen to the project. There is no one behind Bitcoin. It is centralized. It's decentralized. So, you can see every transaction from the Genesis block that has happened with Bitcoin. You know exactly how many Bitcoin are in existence. You know it. You don't have to trust the people at Ripple Labs and XRP to do the right thing. You don't trust in Bitcoin, you verify. With that being said, let's take a few more questions and then we'll wrap it up. And guys, listen, like the videos, 152 of you watching this. Please like the video. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Darius Hamilton, I don't know right now. That was the whole purpose of the presentation. I'm watching it. Let's look at the cases. Right now we're at 80,000. We had 2,701 deaths. For those of you who want to, watch this stream live and put it in the chat. So yeah, we don't know what's going to happen with the supply chain. This is why you have to just be dynamic in your thinking. You have to watch what's happening with the data, what's happening with the information, watch markets, and just be more fluid. If it gets upgraded to a pandemic, guys, we're going into a recession. If it gets upgraded to a pandemic, we're going into a recession. Right now, it's an epidemic. So that's why I said I'm 50-50. I'm not sold either way yet. That's a really, really good question. I would say yes. In my personal opinion, I would say Bitcoin is the only, because you don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is. You don't know if it's a pseudonym. You don't know if it's a group of people, if it's one person, if it's a female, if it's some type of AI, if it's you don't know what it is. And that's what makes it so, beautiful. Is that you don't know who controls it. So therefore it's decentralized. To me, I would say Bitcoin is the only, like when you look at Ethereum, you have to deal with Vitalik. When you look at Ripple, you deal with Ripple Labs. When you looking at any one of these coins, like they're all, I like the privacy coins. I would say I like Monero. I really, really, really like Monero for the privacy features that it gives you, because it's the ledger's private, and the way that they process transactions, you can't really track them. And I love Dash. I love privacy coins because it allows you to be able to move money around. But in my personal opinion, Bitcoin is the only decentralized coin. Now, that doesn't mean that it's the only coin that's going to be successful. As I said, I own Tezos. I own a lot of Tezos. I own a lot of Ethereum. I used to own a lot of Cardano. I sold out of it. I don't like what Charles is doing with the project. They've been in this testing phase for too long for me. I just don't like the project. It's not a project. I love Monero. For obvious cases, you can move money around. I'll just say that. Tron is garbage. That's Justin's son. Neo, I lost a lot of money in Neo. I lost probably like $30,000 in Neo. Neo's a garbage project now. It was supposed to be the Chinese version of Ethereum. I love Atom. I love that coin. I love what they're doing with it. Ontology was another coin that I had high hopes for. It ended up being garbage as well. So Zcash, I made good money in Zcash when it first pumped. What's my other coin? Aeon. I gotta write down a list. OX, I like this coin. 0x. This is a good token. But again, these are centralized coins, but they have different value propositions. Like, Ethereum's trying to be the computer of the world, and then they're trying to get into the whole DeFi space. And if they can capture 10% of the global finance market, what does that do for the market cap? Remember, guys, I was talking to you about the pension funds, about how they have trillions of dollars. They have 18 global pension funds. The top 300 funds have $18 trillion under management. If the crypto space can capture 10% of that, what does that do to the market cap? Bitcoin right now is sitting at $173 billion. What's going to be the price of Bitcoin if we get to $1 trillion market cap? See, this is how you got to think, right? You got to think like that, right? What's going to happen to the price of Ethereum if we can get to $1 trillion market cap? This is this is what you're investing in, right, guys? This is what you're looking at when you're looking at these crypto projects. Like somebody just said, Engine. I got airdropped Engine from I think I own EOS. EOS gave me an airdrop. I got airdropped Engine. I got airdropped Ontology. I got airdropped a lot of different coins from EOS. So, this is the value proposition that you have with these coins, is that if these pension funds and mutual funds and traditional finance, if one of these crypto projects, if DeFi can capture a percentage of, Visa, a percentage of Amex, a percentage of PayPal, what does that do for the value? So it's a lot of opportunity here, man. And that's why I was going back to the whole presentation today was about opportunity. Don't be fearful. Don't be fearful. There's a lot of opportunity, right? The stock market is going to come back. Let's say it sells off 10, 20%. That's a buying opportunity. Let's say it sells off 10, 20%. That's an opportunity to short. You got to go educate yourself about this stuff, but there's opportunity. Made by the same entity, gifted to two separate entities. Of course. And I plan on doing a video on Ripple. I like, before I really speak on a project too in depth, I like to have the information to present in front of people. So I'll probably do a video on why Ripple is garbage. But again, guys, you can make money off garbage. Guess what? Banks made billions of dollars off of selling garbage derivatives. You can make money off garbage. Look at most of the marijuana stocks. They pumped and then they crashed. And then they pumped and then they crashed. You can make money in all markets. There's opportunity, right? Subprime lending. There's money to be made. There's money to be made everywhere. You just have to have a different mindset of how you approach markets. Bitcoin theoretically can close the racial wealth gap. I mean, it could, but you got to think about it. Most people despair. Like, again, that goes back to the Patreon. I offered to teach people about blockchain technology for $10. Think about this, right? I offered to teach people for $10. I paid thousands of dollars for this information. I've invested and I've lost money. I've made money. I've lost money. And here I am willing to teach people for $10 a month about blockchain technology. And, you should have saw the comments I received about people saying, oh, I'm not paying for nothing. And it's just like, people just a lot of people don't care about information, man. Now, if this was the Umar Johnson video, if I was talking about Polite, if I was talking about Jay Morrison or somebody, if I was exposing some beef or some drama, talking about somebody's taxes or their kid, man, this video, I have 600-700 people watching it right now. That's just how people do. But I do plan on launching a Patreon. It's going to be affordable. We're going to do 3 live streams a week. And we're just going to go over projects and go over different things and really go into depth and talk to you about coding and programming and building a blockchain and the trade-offs and different design features and why would you want to design Ethereum the way that you design Ethereum, and different block intervals. Why does Bitcoin produce a new block every 10 minutes? Like, just giving you different stuff. So With that being said, though, guys, I'm going to leave the stream here. Please like the video, share the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Please join my mailing list. Also, my what's the name? Hold on. One last thing. My Instagram is in the description below. So if you want to message me rather than emailing me, follow me on Instagram and just DM me, and that way we can talk directly through Instagram. Is much easier. And with that being said, guys, I'm going to end it right there. And also my PayPal is in the description. Thank you, guys. Have a great, beautiful, and blessed night. And tomorrow we'll be live streaming about some solutions and things that can be done to stop the spread. So have a great night, guys.